see if we can get that underway. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you for giving us an hour of your time today. I know everyone's got lots of things going on, holidays pressing, and some things to finish up. But thank you all for joining us, for signing up and joining us. We'll get you credit in Super and looking at those who are in attendance. I'll get that checked off after our meeting today for your credit. I want to introduce to you first of all, as before we get going, our Tennessee Agribility staff, and only a couple of us aren't here this morning. I am Troy Duggar with the project director for Tennessee Agribility. I also work in the Center for Profitable Agriculture in Columbia and Murray County. Our center deals mainly with value-added agriculture. So again, I appreciate everyone being on this morning. Joetta White is one of our area specialists for agribility, and Joetta got a bug last night, so I don't think she's on here this morning, and I know she's going to hate to miss if she's not able to get on. Joetta is our area specialist for agribility in the western region. She's housed in Gibson County, so she covers the western region for us and the western half of the central region. And she works also in the summer. She does a program with Tennessee State University, the occupational therapist and physical therapist students, to kind of help them learn about agribility, and they kind of work on a project that will benefit agribility for us also. On here with us is Eileen Legault. Eileen is our Eastern Region Specialist for Agribility, and she covers the Eastern Region and the Eastern half of our Central Region. She is housed in the Eastern Region office in Knoxville. Eileen also works with veterans who are coming out of the military that want to farm and do some things that they want to do. They can have some hidden limitations, if you will, with the PTSD or traumatic brain injury. And so she works with those and also works with the Farmer Veteran Coalition of Tennessee. Also on our team, not here with us today, Finest Striblin, representing TSU with Agribility. He conducts the New Farmer Academy, in charge of that across the state each year and in the different regions across the state. We do have some agribility funds to help with some of the scholarships for some of our clients and some of the veterans to attend the New Farmers Academy each year. I want to think about quickly just a note to the agents. If you, in your work, if you come across farmers who you think could use a benefit from some services from agribility, I want you to reach out to us. Reach out to me. It might be quicker if you reach out directly to Eileen or Joetta, either one. I don't know how to say this exactly, so I'm careful how I say this. We're not always looking for what people might think is the bigger disabilities, if you will, a loss of limb or spinal cord injury. We work with those also. But what I want to call your attention as well, when you think about the aging population of farmers, there might be some things we could help with on that end as well. So we think about maybe diminished sight, diminished hearing, back problems, knee problems, joint problems, whatever it might be. Don't overlook those and reach out to us on that. So that's part of our job also. If they've got bad arthritis problems or other chronic diseases, those are some things we might could step in and offer some help if we can. Today, we're switching our focus just a little bit to talk some about farm safety. And part of agribility too, in some sense, is trying to prevent some secondary injuries of farmers so that they can continue to do what they want to do. Just a little bit of data quickly for you, and you may know some of these already, but some fairly recent data shows us with when you look at the industries that are out there, and of course agriculture gets lumped in with forestry, fishing, and hunting, the number of fatal occupational injuries, they rate third in this category, and the number of fatal injuries. They're behind construction and behind transportation and warehousing. But when you look at that, when you look at the fatal injury rate, and you look at that on per 100,000 of full-time equivalent workers, then agriculture and all those others, they quickly move to number one on the list. And that injury rate per 100,000 full-time employees goes to 22.2%. And when you look at all worker fatal injuries, that number is only 3.2. So I'm not telling you anything. You know how dangerous the field of agriculture can be, and some of those stats kind of prove that for us as well. But we have an opportunity. We have to work a little bit in some farm safety areas, And so that's what we're trying to do. And this is the first attempt on some of that today. And so we're glad that you're here with us to share this hour. I want to introduce to you our speaker today, Dr. John Cole, who's Associate Professor of the Department of Agriculture, Geoscience, and Natural Resources at the University of Tennessee at Martin. He's going to present some information to us today. He's been teaching agriculture engineering technology courses at Martin for over the last 11 years. His presentation today will be on blind spots, I think some on ROPS, the Rollover Protection System, and some information on the Safe Farm Steward program that he is working in as well. That may be of interest, hopefully, to some of the agents that are out there. We plan to allow some time for questions at the end, or go ahead and put those in the chat if you want to, as things might come up. We'll deal with those as we go along. So again, thank you for being here. We'll thank Dr. Cole for giving us his time as well. And Dr. Cole, I'm going to turn it to you and we'll get this underway this morning.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate it, Troy. Thanks for the opportunity to talk a little bit about safety here. And sad to hear Joetta's not feeling too good. I guess a little background there. I don't remember how exactly I was introduced to Joetta, but somebody connected me with her. It's probably 3 or 4 years ago, maybe longer back than that. And we've actually, I've had some students work on some projects through Tennessee Agribility with her. And so I met her, I think it was down around Alamo one time, and I had a student that was working on a project down there, and he used it as his senior project. And it was a neat little project dealing with chicken tractors. So it was kind of unusual, but the student really enjoyed it. And he even mentioned it a couple of times after that little project was over, how neat he thought it was to be able to help somebody out and just do a kind of a unique project that he probably would never come across on his own. So it's been a good relationship. Look forward to working on some projects in the future through Tennessee Agribility. But again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit today. I guess kind of here on the front end, I just let you know I teach some safety aspects in some of my courses here at UTM. Then I'm also involved in a grant through the Southeast Center for Ag Health Injury Prevention, which is based at the University of Kentucky. So do some work in there with those folks as well. And just kind of as we go through this, if you have some questions, like was already mentioned, drop those in the chat and I'll try to answer them the best of my ability. And of course, if I don't know, I'm not going to send you off on a wild goose chase. I would for sure, though, dig around and find the answers if we can. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I've got some slides to share with you. And we'll kind of walk through this together here. So my goal today is just kind of at the beginning, I'm going to give a quick overview of some farm safety, I guess, kind of just general type information, and we'll look at that. And then toward the middle part, I'm going to move into talking about ROPS and also blind spots. And then I'll wrap up talking about that program that was mentioned related to farm safety and the opportunity we have for extension agents across Tennessee to get involved in that.
Dr. Cole, we're not seeing your total screen. I don't think we're seeing kind of the other mode, whatever that's called, presentation. Right, it's not the full presentation. There you go. Thanks, sir.
Right. There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. Working with these dual screens is problematic sometimes. And so this slide set was adapted from the Safe Farm Steward curriculum. And I give this curriculum as part of one of my classes, Ag UT 350, which is a farm machinery course that I do each fall. So in my classroom, we went over a very similar slide set. We didn't talk in class about everything that's included on here. So I added a little bit for us here today. Like Troy already mentioned, there's tons of statistics out there related to farm safety and all the issues that farmers face. And just kind of how that compares to the construction industry and other types of work, even including like factory work and things like that. And sometimes it's hard to find like updated data related to that. And so I found some numbers and updated here. In 2022, there were 173 fatal work injuries in Tennessee. And that was an increase over the previous year. So there's a lot of injuries kind of across the boards in agriculture, but equipment in general, and especially tractors, are ones that really account for a lot of those injuries. So 1 in 3 ag-related deaths are caused by tractors. So it can be a definite safety hazard just to be on a farm and to work around that equipment day after day. And so if we kind of break it down and look at what contributes to that high number of injuries and fatalities, we could kind of lump it into like 4 categories here, or factors that contribute to that. And we're going to look at each one of these individually just real quickly here. But environmental issues, environmental factors, personal factors, also just the fact that on a farm you got ever-changing tasks each day. It's not like working in a factory where it's just the same thing day after day after day. In an ag environment, you're going to be hit with different scenarios each and every day. So that's going to play a role for sure. And then the fourth one there is the social, economic, and you can maybe say political. Maybe a better word would be regulatory factors that would come into play. And so all 4 of those, I feel like, are going to contribute in some form or fashion to, I guess the level of risk that's involved in farming. So we look at the first one there on the list, the environmental factors. I think both of these images here do a good job at maybe giving us some visuals on how these come into play. If you look at that picture there on the left, I mean, just kind of look at it from a terrain standpoint. We've got hills in the background back there. This farm is kind of spread out along the road there and got varying topography and terrain. Looks like the road kind of goes down each side to the crops. We've got some crops there on the left and maybe some pasture on the right up the road there a little bit, but it's not flat terrain. And so terrain is going to be a big issue for sure, especially if you get out and toward East Tennessee and those parts where we've got, much more hilly terrain to deal with. And so that's going to for sure contribute to rollovers and just issues dealing with tractors and equipment in general, dealing with that unevenness in terrain and moving from across ditches and things like that. So that would be an environmental factor. And then over there on the right, that picture, I was kind of aiming for there, in agriculture, you're kind of at the mercy of the weather, right? And so we're dealing with, kind of hurrying up sometimes to beat the rain, and then working as much as we can during that good time when the weather's just right, and then just dealing with that kind of ever non-ending struggle of kind of getting everything done in that time and in that window that we have, as far as when the weather's right, the temperatures are right. And then you're also out in the snow, you're out in the rain, and all those environmental factors are going to kind of, all kind of come together and make for a perfect environment for sometimes not paying attention to the safety aspect in agriculture. So environmental factors for sure play a role. And then, as Troy mentioned a while ago, as far as personal factors go, farms are led by aging farmers, and that's just kind of where we are right now in agriculture. The average age of a farmer, according to some statistics, I've seen some that have the average age a little bit higher, but this one I pulled up here recently said average age about 57 years old. And so just because that, we all slow down as we get older. I'm definitely not as spry as I used to be, for sure. And so, as we age, that's going to slow down our reaction time. And then also just dealing with things such as, reduction in vision and just hearing loss, and all those are going to play a role in just general safety on the farm. And then that first bullet point up there mentions the overlap of home and work. And I guess really what that means is, if you work in a factory environment, you come home at the end of the day, and then you got your work environment that you're in, and then you get in your vehicle and you drive home, and there's no overlap there at all. Those are totally separate. In agriculture, those mesh together. Those are just like always kind of there together, existing together. I worked on a dairy farm in Moscow, Kentucky during high school. And at that farm, it was a confined animal feeding operation. The dairy barn was directly behind the farm owner's house. You could probably step 20 steps out their back door and you were in the dairy barn. And so there was no separation at all. They were right there living on the farm. Cows, just feet from their back steps. And so that overlap kind of makes us sometimes maybe a little bit lax in paying attention to safety and things like that. And so that overlap maybe doesn't provide that separation that you would have in other occupations such as factory work or even construction work. And then kind of going hand in hand with that is the idea there in that second bullet point, that picture right there in the center with that boy riding on his grandpa's lap driving the tractor. We have lots of different age groups operating equipment on a farm. Lots of times that's out of necessity. And so we may have young kids out there operating tractors and other pieces of equipment. And then we have sometimes people that are very, very aged operating equipment as well. So that can also add in some issues with health. And then those bottom two bullet points, mental health and stress and physical health. We all know agriculture is a stressful business, especially when inputs are high and crop prices are low. That just makes for stress. And then we all know if we're in a stressful situation, sometimes we don't make the right, the best decisions and the best choices. That's going to affect our ability to think clearly. And just kind of our mind is in a different place when we're under stress. And so, again, when that comes into play, that's going to kind of reduce our focus on safety and maybe distract us to some degree. So those personal factors all play a role for sure. And I already mentioned this one here, ever-changing daily tasks. I've worked in factory environments before teaching at the university. And in a factory, you just have rows upon rows sometimes of people that's doing the same task over and over. There was a guy I remember at a factory I worked in 15 years ago. The guy told me he hadn't missed a day of work in 20 years, and he had been at that one machine doing the same job day after day for 20 years. And so he knows his work and his job, right? It's something he does repetitively. And I guess even in that sense, maybe you could get complacent. But in agriculture, especially, if you look at those pictures there, one day you may be out in the field working, the next day you may be in the shop because it rained and working on pieces of equipment and doing maintenance. Sometimes you may be mending fences or feeding cattle. And so when you're changing jobs so much like that and so many different pieces of equipment are involved, you may be on 3 different tractors in the course of a day. Each of them have their own nuances, right? We know older tractors are much different than newer tractors, and they have different degrees of technology. All those are going to kind of combine and to make a ripe environment for us not really kind of having safety at the front of our minds and really thinking about that and being focused on it. And it makes us lax in that. So, things break down, we have to work on them. Sometimes those get pushed off and maybe we're not working with equipment that is the most safe and designed the way it should be. And then the last contributing factor here is social, economic, and regulatory. So if you think about ag in general, I keep going back to comparing it to like a factory or construction type environment, because in those two industries, there's a lot of regulation. In the factories I worked at in the past, TOSHA may show up, OSHA may show up, sometimes unannounced, sometimes they'll let you know beforehand. But there are a lot of regulations in those environments as far as keeping people safe. There's little, if any, regulation, depending on what state you're in and what specific facet of agriculture you're in. But oftentimes there's little government regulation oversight. And so because of that, there's more flexibility, and then also, I guess, more opportunities sometimes for us to, kind of not really pay attention to those safety aspects. 98% of farms are family farms. Those family farms can employ, teenagers all the way up to really older folks out there too. And so because of that big age gap in there, that big span of ages in there, we've got all sorts of demographics of people that are out there working. And then if you're in a family farm, if you have less than 10 employees, lots of times there's exemptions from it's health and safety inspections and all those sorts of things. So if you're a family farm under that 10 person threshold, you have some exemptions then there. And so because of that, maybe again, we become a little bit lax on the safety side of things. And then that second bullet point there is a big one, I think, all across the state and really just in the United States in general. Now, older equipment often lack safety features that the new equipment has. And then sometimes even on the newer equipment, we get creative in coming up with ways to bypass some of those safety features and kind of go around them from time to time. So, but I'm sure we all know farmers, and I can think of a few right now off the top of my head, who seem to take pride in keeping older equipment going, right? And so that's kind of their thing. They've got some old tractors out there and old combines that they've managed to keep running for decades essentially, and definitely those for sure don't have the modern safety features that we have on the newer pieces of equipment that are out there on the market right now. And so all those factors again would kind of all come together to make an environment ripe for injuries and even fatalities in the agricultural world. So, kind of now just zeroing in mostly on machinery here and specifically in on tractors, I'm going to talk about a few things and hazards that we should, kind of have our eyes open for. And, most severe farm incidents and accidents involve or revolve around machinery, usually missing guards and shields, just operator inexperience or just neglect on the part of the operator themselves, and just kind of just getting careless and lackadaisical, I guess you'd say. And so I got a big list over there on the left of different hazards that we need to keep our eyes open for. And I pulled this list of hazards, and you can look up this on your own. This Farm Safety Association has a fact sheet that they output, and it's a pretty old fact sheet, but they all still hold true. All those hazards listed there are ones that we need to pay attention to, but especially the topic of today is that crush points aspect. And I'm just going to point out a few of these here. As far as shear points go, we're just looking at, points where, somebody could get their fingers in there and we got two pieces of equipment, two moving parts moving opposite of each other essentially. And so when we have those moving opposite of each other, those are prime points for somebody to, stick a finger in there and have an issue for sure. So these are commonly found on crop cutting equipment, combines and headers and things like that. Then we got pinch points, and these would be around chains and rollers, any type of power transmission devices such as belts and things like that as well. Usually these now in the modern world will have shields around them, and those shields usually do a pretty good job. But anytime you do maintenance, usually you're taking those shields off. If you have to replace that chain or do some adjustment, we take the shield off. And where does that shield normally go? Kind of against the wall in the shop. Does it get put back on there? Hopefully it does, but lots of times it doesn't. And when you can kind of cruise around your county and just as you see ag equipment and visit with farmers, lots of times I've noticed those shields and things have been removed and they're just kind of hanging out over there against the shop wall where they last worked on it and didn't get it put back on there. And so, and then if you think about going back to where we were talking about economic and social factors, a lot of that older equipment didn't have shields on it. I mean, you can look at old antique equipment. I mean, there's belts and chains everywhere, and they didn't have a bit of guards on them. It just wasn't at top of mind back in those days, and so they were just missing in lots of cases. Weren't even a part of the original design. So we got to be mindful of those pinch points. Wrap points is another big one. PTO shafts. I mean, you can go to state fairs and stuff and see demonstrations of PTO shaft. See those demonstrations with how quickly something can get caught up and wrapped up in a PTO shaft, and that's one that's kind of been. I remember as a kid in FFA and things of seeing demonstrations of these PTO shafts, and if you don't have that shaft guard on there, of the injuries that can occur from that. So those are definitely ones that we got to pay attention to and kind of keep top of mind too. But those would be known as wrap points. And then our topic for today is really looking at these crush points. And when we think about crush points, they can occur all over the farm, but in multiple points with machinery and especially tractors. So just think about hitch points where you connect any type of implement to the tractor itself. Those could all be crush points that could be problematic when changing out implements. But then also another one that maybe we don't typically think of as a crush point would be with a tractor overturn. So if we see that old Ford tractor there, it doesn't have a ROPS on it. And so if that thing tipped over, the operator obviously could be crushed between the tractor and the ground in that scenario. And so that overturn issue is a big one. And then we have pull points on our list here. This again would be rollers. If you got lodged material, forages or something like that being fed in between two rollers, and that becomes stuck in there essentially. The tendency is like in the picture right there with that red circle, tendency is to try to pull that out or push it on through. And if a person's holding on to that, they can easily get pulled into that machine. And then hydraulic systems can also be problematic. Most of these operated in excess of 2,000 psi. They break and wear out over time for sure. And if you've ever kind of cut a hydraulic line, hydraulic fluid goes everywhere quickly, and it's at a very high rate of speed. And couple that up with it being extremely hot, that fluid can cause a lot of issues as far as safety goes for the operator. So those are all risks that we can run across in agriculture. So kind of moving into these two specific topics of ROPS and blind spots. When we talk about rollovers, that was, typically one of the really prominent causes of farm injury and death that we used to see in the news. Again, I can remember as a kid, every year it seemed like somebody in our area, you'd hear of a neighbor mowing on a hillside and rolling a tractor over, either being severely injured or killed as a result of that. So years and years ago, I believe it was UC Davis, somebody experimented with, I think it was a senior design project. One of the professors had an idea of building a structure that would basically almost make a cage around the operator of the tractor. And so it took decades for that structure, now known as the ROPS, to kind of come full circle and be a part of every design of a new tractor and new farm implement. So, like anything else, it takes years and years and years for these things to catch on. But if we look at that graphic right there, going back to 2 or 3 slides back where we're talking about those crush zones, that's not going to be survivable right there if a tractor rolls over on you. But we can make that survivable, a rollover survivable, if we have a ROP system attached and incorporated into our tractor. One critical part that's labeled on there is that seatbelt. And so, for it to work effectively, the way it is designed for, that seatbelt has to be in place. And I'm sure if you've been around tractors very much, if you have one at your house, that's one that we're all guilty of. I think I was out mowing the other day and I'm sitting here thinking, hey, don't forget to put the seatbelt on. Then I got off the tractor a couple of times to do some things, get a drink of water or whatever. And before we know it, I was kind of mowing along on a kind of a hilly area. And I remembered I don't have my seatbelt on. What on earth am I doing? I'm out here mowing with no seatbelt on. That's just one we don't normally think about, right? We've kind of been, become more accustomed to it in our vehicles, in our cars and trucks as we cruise the highways, but still one that maybe is not top of mind in agriculture is having that seatbelt on. But for a ROPS to function the way it was designed to function, the seatbelt needs to be in place. And so I dug up a little bit more data here related to rollovers. This comes from an organization called ROPSR4U.org, kind of a funny name there, but it's the ROPS rebate program. It's kind of a national site. Looking at some of their data that they've collected, tractor is a leading cause of death on the farm. Most frequently ones that occur are rollovers, 96 deaths per year. 80% of those are caused by rollovers that happen to experienced farmers. So these are guys and women who are out there on a tractor almost every day. Very experienced people, but probably been farming their entire lives. But for whatever reason, they get themselves into a situation of a rollover. And so 80% of those deaths are experienced farmers. 1 in 7 farmers involved in a tractor overturn are permanently disabled. So they can't get back to farming. They're in a situation where they have a permanent disability. And then 7 out of 10 farms will go out of business within 5 years of an overturned fatality. That's kind of a staggering statistic if you think about that. 70% of farms, if there's a rollover where someone dies in that situation, they're going to be out of business in a 5-year time period. And I don't have any data to back this up, but my inclination is to think, that person that died in that overturned incident was probably the leader of the farm, or at least heavily involved in it, and just kind of, it just kind of put a damper on the whole operation from that point on, and eventually led to it eventually just kind of becoming something that the family wasn't interested in anymore. And then ROPS are 99% effective in preventing injury or death if you use the seatbelt, 70% effective without the seatbelt. And so you just think about a rollover protection system. If you have that seatbelt on, you're going to be in that zone of protection. If you don't have the seatbelt on, you're apt to fall away from that. So it's still effective to some degree because it keeps the entire tractor from rolling over entirely on you. But without that seatbelt, it does definitely reduce the effectiveness. Half the U.S. tractors out there being used right now do not have rollover protection at all. And then obviously, looking at this website, there's a program available that allows us to maybe offset some of the costs associated with having a ROP system. So what is a ROPS? It's simply a frame that provides a safe environment for a tractor operator. It gives them protection during that rollover scenario. And so, most all new tractors are going to have a ROP system attached to them. Some of them have the ability for them to be laid back and detached essentially. Some of them are fixed permanently in place, but definitely the half that was mentioned in that slide there that don't have a ROP system are older tractors that weren't equipped with them prior to them being like a standard a part of equipment. And then, like I've mentioned multiple times already, the seatbelt needs to be present and to be used. I was a part of a program a few years ago where they helped out farmers to put on ROPS on their tractors, on their older tractors. Standard equipment that they would use for that, they would also replace the seat. So if they were putting a ROPS on there, they would put a new seat, and that new seat always came with a brand new seatbelt on it. Because again, older tractors, a lot of them don't have seatbelts on them, and so we need to make sure that we incorporate that if we're going to go to the trouble of putting a ROPS on a piece of equipment. So I've got a few, resources, and I can share these slides if we have ability to do that, if anybody's interested at the end. But I put a few resources together to kind of give you maybe some tools for you to use out there in your daily work. A couple of demonstrations. This one's a little bit, the name is funny, I guess you'd say. It's called the Mr. Good Egg demonstration, and you've probably ran across this before. I've seen it used in multiple kind of presentations. It's a good one to use with younger folks, but I think adults get a kick out of it too. And I'll just kind of show you real quick. I'm not going to play it for you, but I'll show you the gist of it. I'll get it to come up here. And so this is the gist of the demonstration. What they'll do, they'll have a tractor that has a ROPS and doesn't have a ROPS. And you take and you physically put an egg on the tractor. So it's kind of funny, but he'll set an egg on there and he'll tip this tractor over and basically show the observer, obviously the egg gets crushed. Then he does the exact same thing with his tractor that has ROPS on it. If I can find it here. So he's going to put him a little seatbelt on Mr. Good Egg, and he tips him over. He'll tip him over and he'll make it through that rollover scenario. Again, this is more geared towards students, but I think it's a good one to show students and adults alike. Another good resource is this National Ag Safety Database, and some of the data I used here in the slide set came from there. And then, of course, the rebate program that I took a little bit of data out of. I encourage you to kind of get on here and check this one out. There's in some states, there's money available, and then they have a sign-up sheet like for Tennessee. You can sign up for in Tennessee, and if there's interest, they'll try to get some money into a ROPS rebate program that would retrofit tractors in that. And the main thing on this website is they've got lots of really good videos related to rollovers and rollover protection systems. And so these, like if you have a meeting or something like that, and you maybe want to highlight ROP systems, there's a lot of good videos in here that show kind of what a ROP system is and the importance of wearing a seatbelt as you have that. And then this last one here is a interesting demonstration that I came across a while back, and it does a good job of showing the purpose of a ROPS. And we'll take a quick look at this one here. This is a farm safety show, and this is a remote controlled tractor. And so he's driving this and he's going to run onto this steep slope right here and actually physically roll the tractor over and demonstrate how important the ROP system is. So their little test dummy in there has got a seatbelt on. That's another good one that really kind of highlights the importance of a ROP system and also of having that roll bar or the seatbelt in place as you're driving through the field. So those are some resources that I thought might be useful kind of out in your daily work. All right, so shifting for a few minutes here to blind spots. What is a blind spot? I looked up a real simple definition: areas near a vehicle that cannot be directly seen by the operator of the vehicle. And so we think about when you're going down the interstate, just think about those blind spots that tractor trailers have. And they'll, usually have stickers on the back that says, hey, they'll outline that as you're coming up behind that tractor trailer saying, hey, I can't see you if you can't see my mirrors. So that's something that most drivers are familiar with, that a tractor has a blind spot. And in the case of this tractor trailer here, he's got a 2-lane blind spot on his right, 1-lane blind spot on his left, and of course he can't see directly behind the vehicle with his mirrors alone. So as we look specifically at agriculture, equipment blind spots increase the risk of rollovers and runovers. And so just going back to the idea in changing of terrain, just not being able to see ditches and holes and things like that might result in a rollover. And then, of course, the runover aspect is, a person that's next to the tractor, especially kids, that you can't see very well. We have blind spots all around tractors, front, sides, and behind, and not only tractors, but other pieces of farm equipment and obviously farm trucks and things as well. The size of those blind spots is going to obviously vary based on how large the vehicle is. The bigger the vehicle, the bigger the blind spot. So it should be kind of a no-brainer, but I think it's good to kind of be reminded of that from time to time. And then another thing that's going to play a big part in that blind spot is the height of the operator themselves. So a taller person sitting in the cab of a tractor is going to have more of a larger field of view than somebody that is not quite as tall. And then also the person outside of the tractor, that shorter person is going to be more difficult to see from that cab. So a little demonstration here. If we look at this John Deere tractor right here, kind of visualize in your mind, where do you think those blind spots are going to be for that tractor? And so when I look at it, I immediately start thinking, probably for sure out front. Maybe we're going to see some blind spots out there. This is kind of a narrow nose on this one, but there's going to be a blind spot out in the front for sure. Probably some in the back and to the sides, and especially in close to the wheel wells and things like that, especially if there's a kid in there, it may be difficult to see them. And so I just kind of highlighted a few here that stood out to me as I was just looking at this picture. And again, that's going to be determined by how tall a person is, and then how tall you are, and the person that is outside the tractor is going to affect that. I came across a study that I thought does a really good job of showing those blind spots for a very specific piece of equipment. This comes from the University of Iowa, and they studied looking at blind spots of different types of farm equipment. And this one here is specific to tractors. So they did a blind spot study for that New Holland tractor there pictured on the top left of this slide. And what they did, they put a grid around the tractor of basically some posts, and you can see those poles down there in that bottom left picture as compared to the tractor. And then they put these color markers showing it marked at different heights. And so then they had a person sit in the cab of that tractor and basically document the color markings that they could see on those posts all around the tractor. So this data that's shown here on the right of the slide basically gives us the results of their study. And so that one there is at the top left, it says without a passenger. All those grayed out areas are spots that could not be seen by the operator. And that's at a kneeling height for the worker. So that's just saying that basically somebody bent over in a kneeling position anywhere in those gray areas cannot be seen by the operator of the tractor. And that's without a passenger. Nobody's in the cab with you. All the ones across the top are just the replications of that study. and basically just showing those blind spots in there. The bottom row is with a passenger sitting in the buddy seat on the tractor. And this is one that really hadn't crossed my mind. If you have somebody in there riding with you in that buddy seat of that tractor, that inhibits your ability to see around that tractor to a greater extent. And so it's pretty evident here on the right of all those. We can see that the operator has limited sight ability, but just because physically there's another person sitting to their right in that buddy seat. And another one that came to mind when I was putting this together is skid steers. It's another one not specific to tractors, but definitely a piece of equipment. There are blind spots around skid steers, and so those can become problematic for sure. And we just need to keep in mind that we do need mirrors and things in skid steers, and be mindful around those pieces of equipment that they also have blind spots. So how do we go about remedying this situation that we see of runovers from these blind spots? As I was thinking about out in the world outside agriculture, there's lots of solutions to these. First one that came to mind was a school bus. Have y'all seen those guards that come out in front of a school bus? Those are made to keep passengers from crossing directly in front of that school bus in a blind spot of the operator of the bus. So they have those guards that come out. That bottom left picture there, all of our newer vehicles have a blind spot detector built in to the side mirrors. And then this one, for instance, has a little light that will illuminate on the mirror itself that says, hey, somebody's to your right. You can't see them, but they're there. And then, of course, we have kind of the tried and true method of just having blind spot mirrors that we apply to our equipment and vehicles. And those mirrors give us a wider field of view. So what are some possible solutions that we have to the blind spot issue? Mirrors, for sure. That's one that we can do pretty easily and cheaply. Unfortunately, on a lot of our older pieces of equipment, the mirrors are either gone or they're busted and no longer present. So we could replace those. I put this one here, check, check, check. That just means, just always have your head on a swivel, I guess you could say. Always be looking for kids walking up close to the piece of equipment. Before you get on that piece of equipment, check thoroughly that there's nobody around it, and just kind of keep your eyes open at all times. And then one I think that's kind of our best solution for right now is cameras. So there's lots of camera technology available out there on the market right now that are very specific for agriculture. The same study that I was just talking about over here on the right shows that exact same tractor, and they added 8 cameras to this thing. So it's pretty extensive network of cameras. But now we can see down there in the graphic, there's basically no blind spots at all. Each one of those cameras is placed in a location that eliminates the blind spots. And so by adding those cameras, the researchers in this case were able to eliminate pretty well all the blind spots, with the exception of that one little spot down there on the passenger rear side, or the driver's side rear of that tractor. They were able to eliminate those. And the same thing can happen with skid steers. There are packages now that you can buy that are blind spot cameras specifically designed for skid steers. And so that's a easy solution that's out there. Unfortunately, it does have some cost associated with it, both for the cameras for the tractors and for the skid steers. And maybe that's something that maybe we could put a little bit more emphasis on as far as helping out with funding for those. So that's a good point. Anybody have anything you would like to add to that, or anything that kind of stood out to you before I talk about this last program here? If not, I just want to draw your attention to a program that I'm involved in that some of you may be interested in getting involved in the next couple of years. And it's called the Safe Farm Steward Program. And it's a grant-funded program that goes through the Southeast Center for Ag, Health, and Injury Prevention. And it's based at the University of Kentucky in their ag program. And Dr. Stacy Vincent kind of heads that program up, and he's an ag ed teacher there in the University of Kentucky Ag Ed department. The website is an easy one, safefarmsteward.org. I'd encourage you to check that website out, and I'm going to show you the gist of it here. Get my map to go. Here we go. So the idea behind the program is to increase awareness regarding farm safety. And, I was trying to think of a program that you could compare it to. I'm sure some of y'all maybe been involved in like maybe the Century Farm program, or soil conservation or something like that. Lots of those type of programs, especially like the soil conservation, they'll give the farmer essentially a sign to put out at their farm showing that they have a mind towards soil conservation, and they've actually put measures in place to preserve the soil on their farm. And so this Safe Farm Steward program is kind of along those lines. The vision is to go out to farms, talk to the farmers, and just look at the equipment that they have on their farm. And when we look at that equipment, just evaluate it from a safety aspect. We're not going out there doing I guess an inspection, so to speak. We just want to go out there and look at their equipment and kind of bring it to their attention the parts of that equipment that are maybe lacking from a safety standpoint. And so we do that by requesting that we have the ability to come out there and talk to them to start with, and then also requesting that they let us just kind of walk around their farm, just look at the equipment and evaluate it, and just kind of point out maybe the areas that could use a little improvement. So each one of these green dots on this map here, and you see University of Tennessee at Martin over here, we have several in West Tennessee and kind of scattered out through the southeast. Each one of those green dots is a farm that we've physically gone out there and kind of toured the farm, looked at their equipment, and then determined through a little grading system that we have determined that they are a safe farm, that they are practicing safe farming practices on their farm, and their equipment is meets some kind of minimum standards for farm safety. And when they do that, and when they get that certification, so to speak, they receive one of these signs that they can hang out. They can put this sign out on their fence out at their farm. Lots of farmers put them, in their farm shop, or maybe attach them to the barn outside. And it's one of those things that kind of gives you really a continual reminder about safety. So as you drive by this every day, you're like, hey, safety is an important issue, and that was something that I did at some point and got approved for that farm safety program. And so it's kind of a continual reminder. And each one of those green dots represents a farm in Tennessee, especially here, that has went through that program. So it's a program that is open to ag extension agents. I think we've had a few maybe on this call that have been to Pigeon Forge for the yearly training. It's usually held in July. It's funded through a grant through that Farm Safety Center. And so if you're interested in that, maybe send me an email and connect with me, and I'll connect you up with Dr. Vincent up there at the University of Kentucky. But the facets of the program are, it provides education and training, and that education and training part is in the classroom at universities. That's kind of where I'm involved in it. I teach this curriculum to my students, and then my students in turn go out and do these evaluations on farms that they're connected to. And our students also have the ability to become a safe farm advocate. They will go out and evaluate 5 farms, and once they do that, they are certified in that regard. And then as extension agents, if you go out and survey 10 farms, you can become a safe farm advocate and also a trainer for the program, which means you could train other evaluators in farm safety. So that education and training is a big aspect for university and extension folks. And then those other 3 bullet points there is really at the farm gate itself. Hopefully by us going out and talking to a farmer about the need for farm safety, hopefully that's going to keep it top of mind for them and maybe open their eyes and just remind them really that farm safety is important. If you're around a piece of equipment day after day, year after year, you may be kind of become accustomed to some of the, safety issues of that particular piece of equipment. Get a fresh set of eyes out there. It kind of reminds you, hey, that needs to be fixed, or maybe we need to add a guard to that PTO shaft, or fix our slow-moving vehicle emblems and things like that. So it gives you a second set of eyes, a set of fresh eyes out there on your farm, and kind of emphasizes those things that maybe could be fixed and improved on our farms. And then once they get through the program and receive that certification, and they have that farm sign hanging up out there on their fence or on their barn at their farm, that's going to be like a continual reminder of farm safety, something that they'll see week after week and remind them of the importance of farm safety. And so the idea is that this program over time will create kind of a culture of farm safety in the agricultural world, and just really just be that constant reminder to that. So again, if you're interested in that program, it's a good one to get involved. It's held at Dollywood each. I think we've got 2 or 3 more years left on the grant, but it's at Dollywood in toward the end of July usually, and I can get you some more details on that if you'd like to get involved in that in some regard. So that's all I got in my slideshow there. If anybody's got any questions, I try to answer them the best of my abilities there, but I appreciate the opportunity to share with y'all this morning.
That was great, Dr. Cole. Thank you very much. I don't see anything in the chat, but while you're thinking maybe, and it's kind of a little cold calling, but I kind of text Kathleen. Kathleen, do you mind to say a word or two about your experiences in this program?
No, I can just reiterate what Dr. Cole said. It's a wonderful program. I do it on a little different scale. Like he said, he's in the classroom. I'm out with farmers. I actually had all my stuff scheduled to go start doing these inspections when Helene decided to take out that program for me. But we're trying. We're going to try to start that in December and get out on some of those farms and do those inspections in December and January. But I am working toward getting those 2 to get certified to be able to offer that for agents on our end of the state or whomever needs it. Yeah. But like Dr. Cole said, wonderful program. I agree wholeheartedly that safety's truly very important. We have dealt with a lot of unfortunate accidents that I think some of them could have been prevented, and some of them, just things happen. But we definitely want to push safety to a forefront. And I know that I've spoke with a couple agents in the Eastern region, and they have offered to allow me to come do a safety program similar to what he just did for farmers. So that's available as well.
Very good. Thank you, Kathleen, for jumping there and give us a little more information on that, and for your involvement in all that as well. Any other comments or questions from anyone on the program? Dr. Cole, thank you. If not, just a couple other things before we let you go, and maybe Dr. Cole and Eileen, if you can stay on for just a minute after we're done, just for a brief talk. I do have another call right at 10, but anyway, to the agents again, one other thing, thank you for being here. But one thought we kind of had to agents, if you think about it, if you have meeting, I know you have educational meetings going on, newsletters, emails, and those kinds of things. And just think about it from time to time, maybe to include with that just maybe a brief note or sentence about farm health and safety. An idea on that, if you don't mind to do that at times. If you need some thoughts or help with that, you reach out to us or Eileen and Joetta. We can help you maybe put some of those. We just think it's important to maybe keep that on the front burner on everyone's mind about farm health and safety as we go along. Another thing that I know the agents are aware of, so your producers, we've worked as well some with the Tennessee Farm Family Health and Wellness Program. That master program will be starting up in January. Flyers will be coming out about it pretty soon. There are 5 webinars on that. I think beginning January the 30th, and then help February the 13th and 27th, and also March the 13th and 27th. And so those flyers will be coming out on that program pretty soon as well. If you have a chance to promote that, again, those are programs that help with the TAEP eligibility for both application A and application B. Also want to make a call for our next session on farm safety is going to be January the 15th. Same time, 9 Central, 10 Eastern Time. Dr. William Hoover, Murray State, will be with us, the Professor of Agriculture Mechanization. Main focus, we mentioned a little bit about PTOs this morning, but main focus will be on PTOs and maybe another area of farm safety also. Probably maybe late this afternoon. I just want to send you all a quick link to a brief survey about today's program, kind of maybe what you learned, what topics could we maybe look for down the road, and maybe how this program can be used. So if you look for that, it'll just be brief to 3 or 4 brief questions. If you won't mind, I'll get that link to you pretty soon. Eileen, anything else from your side or anything you want to make mention of before we let everybody go?
No, just thank you, Dr. Cole. That was an excellent presentation. And thank you all for taking time for this very important topic. And please include it in any of your presentations. Like Troy said, just a small reminder to keep it at the forefront.
Thank you, Eileen. And he did include his email in the chat for Dr. Cole. Dr. Cole, you mentioned it in the presentation. If you want to, if you're okay, if you want to send me the slide sets, and I can send that to the agents if that's
Sure.
acceptable
Yep.
to you.
Yep. I'll email it to
Feel
you.
free to do that, and I'll get it to the ones on the call today. A couple of them, see a couple of names that maybe not be in super, but I'll try to get you in super so you can get credit for being here today also. I'll pause if there's anything else. We're almost to the top of the hour.
Hey, Troy, this is Ronnie. What are the
Hey, Rodney.
next 2 dates after this, after January? I know they're in there, but with me
Oh,
being,
man.
you don't
I
have,
did look that
okay,
up, Ronnie.
I'll go back and look at the
Let's
first
see.
email.
I can send it to you. It's
Yeah.
March and May, but I
Yeah.
don't remember the dates quite offhand. I should have looked those up and I didn't.
That's fine.
I'll ship it to you. I'll ship it to
Thank
you.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for being on. Wayne Key says one of them's March the 19th.
Good.
And it's about the same in May, but I forget. May 21. Thank you, Wayne.
He's
Had to
sharp.
send
He's
him-
on the
I'll
ball.
have to send Wayne an extra check or something today. Thank
Give
you,
him a
Wayne, for doing
certificate.
that.
Certificate. Yeah.
March 19th and May 21st. So
Thank
thank you,
you.
Ronnie. Thank you, sir. All right, agents, thank you for being on. Dr. Cole, Riley, if you don't mind to stay for just a minute, certainly appreciate everybody's time this morning. Thank you all.
Let's stop recording, Troy.
Thank you.